So Hare Krishna, everybody. Welcome back. This is our level 2, and we are beginning with week 1. So level 2, the way we will do level 2 is we are going to go deeper into the Bhagavad Gita. But here we would like you to also start reading the Bhagavad Gita. So if you have the Bhagavad Gita as it is by Srila Prabhupada, you can go through. I've already sent the what to be read each week. So there's the preface, there's the introduction, and you can go on to also level chapter 1. And as we are going through these chapters week by week, it won't be one full chapter. I will give you a set of verses to go through, and we can discuss further at the end of each session. So normally I would be going through the Bhagavad Gita, Padma Purana, which is basically glorifying the Bhagavad Gita. There'll be some stories. So basically we are going to look at stories from the Padma Purana, which is referring to the Gita Mahatmya, or glorification of the Gita. So for each chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, there is a story affiliated with this Bhagavad Gita. So we will go through them, and at the end of those stories, we will summarize the chapter and mainly revisit some of the main points that we have discussed previously in level 1 in summary. And we will basically be looking at Q&A discussions if there are any from your studies of the Gita. So that's how it's going to go weekly. But in between, we will have special sessions. So these special sessions would be just there to break the monotony and to give, to address various topics which may arise from questions. And in this way, we can address them from the perspective of the Vedic literatures. Like for today, for example, today, we are not going to the Gita Mahatma first. I'm starting with a special session. So this special session is basically introducing you to the Vedic literatures so we can understand. So it's a bit off. It's not mentioned in the Gita. So we are trying to understand certain basic or even advanced concepts as we go along this discussion. And along the way, if there are any questions which require a full presentation, then I can also take this up and prepare something for that. Okay, so let's start with some prayers. So I've extended the prayer list a little, and the meanings are also given here. So it's nice to begin by invoking auspiciousness, by offering pranam mantras to the Guru, to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to Krishna, and in this way, we can also, I will send the slides to you later on in PDF, so you can also read through these verses. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajadam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parichana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakhanvitam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Desha Charine He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sude Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vigna Vinasha Narasimheti Namini Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Langayitam Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Guru Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Mishwaram Om Tat Sat. So the topic, special topic today, so that special topic is called the Vedic desire tree. So it's called Kalpa Vriksha. Kalpa Vriksha means the desired, a tree which is able to fulfill all desires. So we will hear later why these Vedas or the Vedic literatures are considered desire tree. They can fulfill all our desires. And also, its ripened fruit. What are the ripened fruit of the Vedic desire tree? So, when we talk about the Vedas, Vedic literature, nowhere else in this world we will find a library of Vedic literatures to match that which is in the Vedic scriptures. If, like for example, if you go to other religions, you will find one book as the main book, or at least a few. So, but in the Vedic literatures, we have 600 million verses altogether. If you consider all of them together, it's about 600 million verses. And it basically, the Vedas are described as the manual of the universe. The entire universe is created, Prakriti, right? And then the Mahatattva and all that. So when, for example, when we buy a television or when we buy some equipment, it usually comes with a manual. So to help us to understand how to use it to the best of its capability. So similarly, we are born in this material universe, and though this material universe is very vast and so many things we do not know, so the Lord does not leave us alone. The Lord gives us this manual on how to live in this universe, how we can make the best out of this existence within the universe. And it also tells us beyond that also how to get out of this material universe as well. So this is basically all the Vedic literatures. So in the Bhagavad Gita, we have heard, the personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god Vivaswan, and Vivaswan instructed it to Manu, and the father of mankind, and Manu in turn instructed it to Ishvaku. So when we talk about the manual of the universe, it cannot be something which is man-made. It can't be something where we create. So human beings cannot manufacture religion. We cannot manufacture existence. What are the codes? What are the laws of existence? So this is not possible. So therefore, this has to come from the Lord himself. So therefore, the Lord in the beginning of creation, he says, right, in here Bhagavad Gita, in the beginning, he instructed it to Sun God, Vivaswan. But here he's only saying one point of it. Before even Vivaswan, other scriptures say that the original creator of this, the creator, the secondary creator of this material universe, there are several different levels of creators. So who created this particular material, this particular universe? So Lord Brahma is accredited with that. And in the beginning of creation, when there was nothing materially, only Lord Brahma was there. So this was given, this knowledge of this Vedas was given to Lord Brahma. And from there, it went down, it was passed on to different places. And then along the way, later on, in different ages, again, this knowledge is established by the Lord with various people. So we have this particular verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Thereafter, in the 17th incarnation of Godhead, Sri Vyasadeva appeared as the son of Satyavati and Parasara Muni. And he divided the one Veda into several branches and sub-branches, seeing that the people in general were less intelligent. So the Vedas have all kinds of information. And in the past, this information was memorized completely. It was not something which we have to read. So it's described that people in different ages, all of them had photographic memory. So there's a word for it. It's called Shruti Dar. Shruti Dar means one who hears once, he is able to forever remember. Crystal clear. So he does not need a computer database. He does not need hard drive. So anything he hears or anything he sees, he is able to remember and instantly recall. So these people are called Shruti Dar. There are some also now, not as much. Previously, the entire Vedas used to be memorized. And it was simply, there's a way to memorize it. There is later on, if I have time tomorrow, I will send an article on how the Vedas are being memorized. So there's a system for it. And while this is happening, but this is true in the previous ages, Satya Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, Treta Yuga, slowly the intelligence, the memory were diminishing. And in Kali Yuga, we can tell ourselves, it's not so easy for us to remember lots of things. We can't remember what we ate 5 days ago. So many things we can't remember so easily. And to become a Shrutidar, to remember just once after hearing it, it's not easy. So therefore, the Lord decided to put all these instructions in books. So he started to write it down. And because no ordinary human being can be entrusted to this job, so the Lord decided to come himself. So Sakyavesh Avatar. So here is the evidence, Srimad Bhagavatam, 17th incarnation of Godhead, Vyasadeva. So Vyasadeva is an incarnation of the Lord. He is not an ordinary human being. And he came to write down all these Vedas, this Vedic knowledge. So therefore, this Vedic knowledge is called Apaurushaya. Apaurushaya, Purushaya means human being. So Apaurushaya means it is made, it is given beyond human beings. It is not given, it is not man-made. So that is the nature of true religion. It has to come directly from God. And we also have even mainstream science, they recognize the Vedic scriptures as the oldest existing spiritual treatises known to man. In fact, based on the current carbon dating evidence and all that, this is just mainstream. At least they say it's about 3,700 years to 4,000 years ago. Actually, it is older, but mainstream science doesn't recognize that. They don't want to accept. It's actually even older than that. They have recently also, and amongst the past few ages also, they have discovered many other evidences, archaeological evidences. So this is, and even if they don't accept, still the Vedas are the oldest evidence of spiritual scriptures. No other religion can claim this. And who wrote these Vedas? So if you remember some stories, Vyasadeva is the incarnation of the Lord, but the person who wrote the Vedas is none other than Lord Ganesh or Ganapati. So what happened was, the Leela goes like this. Vyasadeva, he's playing the role as a Muni, as an ordinary human being, Muni, and then he's like praying, okay, I need to now write down all this information for the benefit of mankind. So to put all this down, I need an expert person who's able to write. So, and then Lord Brahma appeared and then told him, Lord Ganesh is the best person for this. His understanding is very good and he has the capability to write down very, very fast. So then Lord Ganesh was invited, and Lord Ganesh sat, and Lord Ganesh set a condition to Vyasadeva. So he told Vyasadeva, okay, I will write all this, whatever you say, no problem, but you must not stop. My hand cannot stop writing. If you stop dictating and there is a pause in my writing, then I have to put down my pen permanently. I cannot continue writing. So that was the condition that Ganesh told Vyasa. Then Vyasadeva, he was, okay, I accept this condition, no problem. But in the same time, I also will give you a condition. So Vyasadeva gave Ganesh also a condition. So it's fine that you don't stop writing. I will continue giving instruction. But you must also agree that you will not write anything down until you have first understood the meanings of the verses. So then Lord Ganesh said, okay, I will understand it first and then I will write it down. So therefore, this is the explanation of why certain parts of the Vedas are a little bit more difficult to understand. Certain parts are easier to understand, certain parts are difficult to understand, because Vyasadeva, he will continue speaking, but when he wants to take a break for a while, he will purposely produce a verse which is a bit more difficult to fathom. The meanings are very intricate. And Lord Ganesh will, while he's hearing this, he will pause for a while to digest whatever he has just heard from Vyasadeva, and then understanding the meaning, he will smile and then he will write. So this was going on, and for many, I can't remember exactly how long it was going on, but a few months actually. And while Lord Ganesh was writing all these things, his pen broke. He had a very special pen, a feather quill, which it broke. It couldn't keep up with the pace, even though it was a very special pen, celestial pen. It couldn't keep up with the pace of the writing. So after it broke, because Lord Ganesh said he cannot pause, so therefore immediately his enthusiasm was so great, he broke a piece of his own tusk. He got so caught up hearing about this, what all that he was hearing from Vyasadeva, he didn't want to stop, and he broke his own tusk. So, and then used that tusk to start writing. So that's why you can see Lord Ganesh has only one tusk. The other tusk is broken. So Acharyas explain, now usually in horned animals like deers and also with tusks, elephants, like elephants, they have tusk and all that. So usually the animals, their pride is in their horn. So if they have a very magnificent looking set of horn, then they are very proud about it and things like that. So the elephant's pride, is also in the tusk. And Lord Ganesh, of course, he's not an elephant. He's a very great personality. But still, having an elephant's head, he was so detached and he was so determined to continue. He was so enthused to continue writing this scripture that he didn't mind breaking to remove something which is like a very important aspect, like a jewel in his appearance. He didn't mind breaking the tusk and going on. So this was the glory of Ganesh, and also the story of how the Vedas were written. So the place where the Vedas were written, where where Vyasadeva dictated the verses and where Ganesh wrote it down, is still there in India. So this is somewhere near Badrik Ashram. The picture I'm showing you here. This is called Vyasa Gufa. Vyasa Gufa. Gufa means cave. The cave of Vyasa. So this is somewhere near Badrik Ashram in the Himalayas, in the border towards, I think, Tibet or Bhutan or something like that, nearer towards Assam. So what happened? This is where the entire incident took place. So you can also visit. You can see it's a very interesting rock formation. So legend has it that the Vedas were written on palm leaves, on special palm leaves, and it was so big that, and it was all kept together. And later on, they fossilized. These palm leaves, they fossilized and they formed this kind of rock structure. Still, you can see here, it looks like as if it's layer of manuscript, which is layered on top of each other. So the legend says it has transformed into stone with the passage of time. But even archaeological evidence, if they take the sample of this rock, they find that there is botanical fossil inside this rock. So this is also something like an evidence, right? And you will find that along this area, there are no other rocks which have the same kind of structure or the same kind of, this kind of shape. This is the only rock in this area. So it's very interesting. So you can see here, if you go closer, this holy cave is 5,326 years old. This was in 2018. So each year they will repaint this to indicate how old this cave was. So this is basically just a bit of background on it's about 5 kilometers from the Badrinath temple near the Tibet border. So coming back to our Vedic scriptures, so we were saying how anywhere we go also, you will not find any other scripture which is as old or as vast as the Vedic literatures. And it is Purusha. It is directly passed through the Lord. And to ensure that these Vedic scriptures pass through the passage of time in Kali Yuga without being corrupted, because in Kali Yuga, everything gets corrupted eventually. So it's ingenious the way that these Vedic literatures are passed. Number one, it is each of these verses, they are not ordinary writing. Like if you look at other verses, other scriptures, right? If you look at Bible or Quran or whatever, it's all basically sentences, passages, like it tells you about a story. Whereas the scriptures, 600 million verses, they are all beautiful poetry. Every one of them is beautiful poetry. Can you imagine? Is it possible for a man or for even a group of people to write 600 verses of poetry? And this 600 million verses of poetry is not possible. So therefore, this itself is proof that it is God given, right? And not only any kind of poetry, perfect poetry, very beautifully elaborated in different meter. When we say meter, each poetry will have a way of saying it. Like Bhagavad Gita is using a certain meter, and then other verses will use a different meter. So like that, there are different meters. In Sanskrit, these meters are called chanda. So different chandas are there. And it's perfectly balanced. Each verse is perfectly balanced in syllable, like in poem. How to make sure a poem is good? There has to be rhyme, isn't it? So that is just one way. But the syllable count is also perfect. The number of syllables, which is perfectly balanced. It is symmetrical, balanced, and perfect in meter. So that is how the Vedic literatures are sent down. So why it was purposely done like this? It was done like this because if you remember, these verses were all memorized and sung. It's all recited. So as we are reciting, there's a certain poetry to it. So in this way, nobody can make changes. Nobody can start changing. Nobody can start omitting. Nobody can start editing. Because the moment we do that, then the meter will run. The verses will run. So it will not be so perfect already after that. So therefore, to ensure the moment there is any tampering, there will be detection. So very ingenious system of how the Vedas or the scriptures were passed down. So that's one way. Another way is it's not simply just passed down also. It is passed down via parampara, disciplic succession. So, you know, this verse in Padma Purana, Sampradaya Vihina ye mantras te nishphala mata. So particularly in Kali Yuga, there are 4 sampradayas which come directly from Krishna, which are passing this information perfectly. So that means the essence or the core of the message of these scriptures are passed down through this disciplic succession. So in this way, it ensures that these scriptures are not tampered with or, you know, disturbed in any way. So it's not ordinary people who are able to become initiated. So there are certain requirements. So and basically these people who come down are not ordinary either, right? So like for example, in this sampradaya, the Brahma Madhva sampradaya, coming from Lord Brahma, Krishna to Brahma, Brahma to Narada, and Narada to Vyasa. So it's coming through the disciplic succession in this way and passing down. So we can be assured that this knowledge is protected. So this is the first key. So if we want to understand the Vedic literatures correctly, because nowadays there is a lot of misinterpretation, there is a lot of misunderstanding, and this is going on, and tampering. So to avoid being cheated and to ensure that we understand the right thing, so we have to refer back to the scripture, because when Vyasadeva wrote all this, he knew that these things will happen. So he wrote these verses within the scriptures to ensure that it's protected. So therefore he says in the Padma Purana, right, the 4 sampradayas are only to be accepted where this particular knowledge is coming through. The Shri Sampradaya, the Brahma Sampradaya, the Brahma Madhva Sampradaya, the Nimbarka Sampradaya, and the Vishnu Rudra Sampradaya. So in this way, and along the way, the Sampradayas also branched off, but still they all comply to the main Sampradayas, and this knowledge is passed through intact. So that's why the Vedic literatures survive even up to today. Now, if you look at the Bible at the time of Jesus Christ, which was only about 2000 years, there were about 50 gospels which were being circulated. But now in the Bible, you will only find 4 gospels. So 46 gospels went missing. And even these 4 gospels, you will find that there's a lot of evidence of tampering. Many mainstream scholars accept this, that there is tampering evidence. But nevertheless, the essence is still captured. So it's not really a complete loss, but still tampering is there. Whereas in the Vedic scriptures, because of these 2 systems which I mentioned, one is the system of verses with perfect poetry, and which is being passed down through orally, and the other is through the sampradaya. In this way, it is protected. Right. So therefore, it's important to understand this knowledge coming from the sampradaya, because Bhagavad Gita says 246, all purposes served by a small well. So if we have a small well, what we can do with it? We can do many, many things with this water. But all the purposes of the small well can at once be served by a great reservoir of water. So if you have a big lake, what is the necessity of the well? Everything that you can do with the well, you can do with the lake, and you can do much, much more with it as well. So therefore, Similarly, Bhagavad Gita says, all the purposes of the Vedas can be served to one who knows the purpose behind them. So that's very important. So that's why it has to come through the Sampradaya, another reason. Because the main message or the main point or the big picture is not lost at any time. So when one does not go through Sampradaya, then the study of the scriptures, they are basically at sea. It's too many verses, where to start, where to go, what is the main point? They will get lost in the many different interpretations, and they will think that, oh, this is I cannot accept this, certain parts I don't accept, certain parts I don't accept, and things like that. So that it defeats the purpose of the Vedas, because one cannot say I cannot accept one part or I cannot accept two parts. It has to be accepted as a whole to complete the picture. So that's the first key, Sampradaya. So it has to be understood through the chain of disciplic succession, as also corroborated by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, so which we have already heard before. So now that we are talking about the Vedic scriptures, as I said, there are 600 million verses roughly, but we can roughly break them into two categories. So these are the two categories. You must have heard them before, Shruti and Smriti. So nowadays it's also a popular name. People like to name their children like this, Shruti Hassan or Smriti, something like that. So what is Shruti? So the word Shruti basically means to hear. So that's why it's Shruti Dar, one who is able to remember or memorize immediately. So Shruti means to hear. So I put it here for you so you can remember. And Smriti comes from the root word Smaran. So Smriti means to remember. So to hear and to remember. So which do you think is more important? To hear or to remember? So
to hear. Both.
Yes.
Both.
Yes, both. So both are to be accepted. So that's the thing, So there are some people who study the scriptures who say, I only accept Shruti, or I don't accept Smriti. So I only accept Smriti and I don't accept Shruti. So that's not the way. Both has to be accepted. But one can argue that between the Shruti and the Smriti is even more important, because the goal of hearing is ultimately to remember. But one cannot remember unless one hears. But what is the goal? The goal is to remember. So I will also show some evidence later on from the scriptures. One should consult both kinds of scriptures, Shruti and Smriti, as a guide to all one's activities, because religion that does not refer to them is simply a disturbance to society. So this is from the Bhavisha Purana. So here we have an indication of Lord Vyasadeva himself is giving clues. He is leaving these instructions so that we can understand how we can divine the key to understanding the Vedic literatures. So one cannot say, I will only accept one part of it and I cannot accept another part of it. So I'll give more evidence on this. So Shruti and Smriti are both to be accepted together. So this is the second key. So here we need to know these things. Now, when we talk about Shruti, Shruti is mainly divided into 4 different sections. So this we would have studied before in our school. So it's the Samaveda, the Rig Veda, the Samaveda, the Yajur Veda, and the Atharva Veda. So according to archaeological evidence, the Rig Veda is considered the oldest. But that doesn't really mean anything, because that is simply modern scientific archaeological evidence, and they tend to make mistakes as they go along, and it just depends on the sample that they were able to find. But still, that's no issue. We can accept the Rig Veda. But in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, amongst the Vedas, I am the Sama Veda. So there is an indication that the Sama Veda is even more important than the Rig Veda. But here we would like to see one by one first. So what is this Rig Veda? So Rig Veda is basically philosophy, a lot of incantations, a lot of basically talking about various aspects of religion, dharma, activities. So these are all given in the Rig Veda, the instructions behind everything. And Samaveda is basically incantations or hymns. Just a moment. The video is rather distracting. Just a moment. Okay. Okay. All right. So if we continue, the Samaveda is mainly about various hymns which come from the root of the Rig Veda. That means the instructions and the understanding of the Rig Veda is now put into incantations and hymns where it is sung. So it's the practical aspect of the Rig Veda, you could say. And that is basically the Samaveda. And then the Yajur Veda, which is also inclusive of other aspects of whatever that's covered in the Sama and the Rig, it is also extended there. We won't go into the detail of all these topics here. And then we also have the Atharva Veda. Now, in here, the entire manual of the universe is kept here. So it's just not knowledge about spirituality. It's about knowledge of life itself. It's about knowledge of the universe itself. How is this? What is the nature of this universe? How is this universe created? What do we do? What is the nature of the elements? What is the dharma of every living entity? So like that, you will find many aspects. The Rig Veda itself is having about almost 106,000 verses, if I'm not mistaken. So a lot of verses are there. And these 4 Vedas can also be broken into 4 sections. So, you know, in each of these Samaveda, Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Atharva Veda, you could say that they have 4 parts to it. So the Samaveda will have 4 parts, the Rig Veda will have 4 parts, Yajur Veda will have 4 parts, and the Atharva Veda will have 4 parts. So what are these 4 parts? Here, one is called Samhita, the other is called Brahmana, Aranyaka, and Upanishads. Now, the first 2, Samhita and the Brahmana, is predominantly about Karma Kanda. Karma Kanda means fruitive activities. How can we be happy in this material world by performing the various sacrifices? So this is Karma Kanda. You know, if we have a new house, what should we do? You know, Graha Pravesh ceremony, the different upacharas for samskaras, for wedding, for death, and things like that. So all the different activities, the sacrifices, which are meant to ensure happiness in this material creation. So this is Karma Kanda. In the Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna says, right? In the beginning of creation, I have given all these various sacrifices for you so that you can attain your desires. So that is basically what is Samhita and the Brahmanas. These are 2 different sections. We won't go into the details of the difference of these 2. It gets a bit too technical then. So I'm just basically talking about the main classifications. So while the Samhitas and Brahmanas are there, there is also something called Aranyaka. Now, as human beings continue to try to enjoy material creation, continue to try to enjoy the fruits of their activities, they go through various cycles of birth and death, and then they go on like this. But due to their connection with Brahmanas, because in order to perform sacrifice, one has to be connected to Brahmanas, right? So eventually, they will also start understanding about Aranyaka. Aranyaka is the bridge. Aranyaka, as I mentioned here, these are all karma kanda, fruitive activities. Aranyaka is the beginning of the bridge between the karma kanda activities and spiritual activities. So for example, Samhita. Samhita will tell us what if we want success in something, what is the sacrifice that one needs to do. Like for example, a Muni will tell the king, if you want to win over your enemies, perform this sacrifice, example, right? Or if you want to gain the blessings of the devas and get rain or good harvest, perform this sacrifice. So that is Samhita. Samhita gives the details of the sacrifice. So you need to collect 5 different types of grain. You need to collect 4 different types of leaves. You need to collect 6 different types of roots, and you have to burn them in a specific manner. So this is all Samhita, right? And the various chanting that comes with it, the various verses which is taken from the Samaveda to give power to this. We collect the ingredients, but it also accompanied by the chanting. So that will be the Brahmanas. So the Samhita and the Brahmana will also give a bit more explanation about why this particular grain has to be used, or why that particular root has to be used, or why it has to be done in this way. So this detailed explanation about the ritual is given in the Brahmana. But Aranyaka is a bit different. It will start telling, actually, these rituals, the main purpose is not really to enjoy, it is really to develop renunciation. By continuously doing these rituals, you will eventually, your heart will feel like, I've had enough of this. Let me now look to something higher. So Aranyaka is mainly there to create the seed of doubt to the people who are very much engrossed in the karma kanda activities given in the Samhita and the Brahmana. So it's like the inclination to get people to start looking towards something higher. That's Aranyaka. Aranyaka basically means going to the forest. The word literally translates to going to the forest. So that means time to renounce life and try to now look into self-realization, perform austerities. So this particular set of things will give you a lot of information on that. But the cream of the Vedas, the real cream of the Vedas is ultimately the Upanishads, which gives us the full understanding of the spiritual truths. It starts giving us the higher goals of life. So again, as I mentioned before, Evam parampara praptam, imam raja rishiyo vidu. So this knowledge is carefully brought down by parampara. This supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. And Krishna further says in chapter 2, men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas. So now we can understand better the meaning behind this particular verse, right? Because the Vedas, if you see, majority of it, at least 50% of it, it's fully karma kanda. And Aranyaka is only beginning to enter into the mysteries of life, the deeper subtle mysteries, meditation, mystic powers. So this is still material. So you could say 75% of the Vedas is about karma kanda then. So therefore, Krishna gives this particular verse. Men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to heavenly planets, resultant good birth, power, and so forth. So it's very simple. If we feel that we are suffering, we are not happy, then there are rituals, there are sacrifices which are there in the scriptures, where the one's recommendation, when one performs them, in their next life, they will be elevated to a very, very elevated position. They may even attain to the heavenly planets. And this is how one develops sukarma, or good punya, good activities. But Krishna is telling Arjuna, go beyond this, because this is not the purpose of life. This is just there to satisfy you because you desired all these things in this material creation. But really, material creation, even if you go to the heavenly planets, is going to be full of misery. So therefore, better you come out of this material creation. So therefore, Krishna is also giving yoga, the knowledge of transcendence, to Arjuna. So then Krishna says, being desirous of sense gratification and opulent life, they say that there is nothing more than this. So these are the material people, the people who do not understand due to ignorance. We were all like that at one point of time. So, but with knowledge, we can understand that it's something higher, as we have heard from Gita Gyan level 1. So life is not just about sense gratification, to satisfying our senses, and it's not about opulent living. Oh, so there is more than that. So therefore Krishna says, transcend. He tells Arjuna this famous verse, Traigunya Vishaya Vedas, Nistrai Gunyo Bhavarjuna, Nirdvando Nitya Sattvam Sto, Niryoga Shema Atmavan. So Krishna will say, 245, the Vedas deal mainly with the subject of the three modes of the material nature. So this is basically what is in the Samhita, Brahmana, and the Aranyaka. So, O Arjuna, become transcendental to these three modes. That means go beyond these three modes and come to Suddha Sattva. So this Suddha Sattva is to be found in the Upanishads alone. So Krishna says, be free from all dualities and from all anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self. Now this is yoga. This sentence here is already yoga. And this information is not found in the Samhita, it's not found in the Brahmana, it's not found in the Aranyaka, it's found in the Upanishads. So therefore, Karma Kanda, Aranyaka is the bridge, and Upanishad is known as Jnana Kanda, or the repository of knowledge. So it is going beyond material creation. It is talking about spiritual activities. So in this way, human society, it moves around this four cycle: Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. Dharma means duty. So we all have our religious or material duties. These are our duties. We have different positions in life. According to our positions, we have our prescribed duties. So when one executes his prescribed duties according to the scripture, according to the revelations given in the Shrutis, then the result of that would be Artha. Artha means wealth. One gets rewarded for it. So, and what it can mean material, it can mean money, it can also mean position, it can also mean power, it can also mean facilities. So according to one's activities, one performs these activities faithfully, then they are rewarded by Artha. And what's the purpose of Artha? So human being usually, like a farmer, if a farmer is going to till the ground and work so hard in order to, because he wants to enjoy a good harvest, right? So therefore we celebrate Pongal. So the farmers, they work very hard. Then the reward of that hard work is executing their duty properly without sin. Then they get Artha, wealth. And then with this Artha, what do they do? What do human beings do once they get wealth? They generally try to satisfy their desires. So karma. So using this wealth, they try to satisfy their desires, karma. And after they satisfy their desires, they try so hard. Eventually, the nature of this material world is made in such a way that even if one tries his best to satisfy his desires, he will eventually get frustrated. That's basically how the material world works. It's the plan of the Lord, because he wants to bring us back to him. So therefore, he has this plan to eventually frustrate us. So we will get frustrated because, there is life, birth, death. You cannot keep anything. This artha is not permanent. At the time of death, you lose it, and then again you start different. Again, you have to start this cycle. So after getting frustrated, then the jiva will start thinking of, okay, I don't want this material creation. I understand there is misery here. It's difficult. Now I just want to be free of it. I don't want all these desires. I don't want this. I don't want that. I just want peace. I just want to be free. So therefore, moksha. But remember, these four is still material, even moksha, because it doesn't ultimately free one from the cycle of birth and death. You can see here, this is still a cycle. So for a while, one gets liberated. But again, because he is not engaged properly according to his swadharma, that means according to his real dharma, this is material dharma. Because he thinks that he is a man, or he's a woman, or he's a father, or he's a mother, or he's a teacher, or he's a lawyer, or he's a whatever, or he's a king. So because he thinks this way, according to the false ego, he performs these dharma which is according to his material body. So this is all material. And then he feels frustrated or he feels tired of doing it. So therefore he wants to retire, he wants to separate from all these things. So moksha. So for a while he gets liberated, but because he has not engaged himself correctly to the real dharma of the soul, which is serving the Supreme Lord, because he has not developed bhakti yet, so therefore again he comes back into dharma. Again he takes back human mortal form, and again the cycle continues. So it continues life after life after life after life after life. But the key to breaking this cycle is given in the Upanishads. So now that we have spoken about Upanishads, we should know what are these Upanishads. So basically there are 108 Upanishads, and out of these 108 Upanishads, about 11 of them is called Mukhya Upanishad, or very important Upanishads. So here I've put a table to indicate what are these Upanishads which are considered Mukhya Upanishads. And it's the number one Upanishad is Isha Upanishad. This is basically acknowledged as the topmost Upanishad. And then we have the Kena Upanishad, the Katha Upanishad, the Prashna Upanishad, Mundaka, Mandukya, Taittiriya. So like that, there are altogether about 108 Upanishads. And these Upanishads are all coming from these four places: Samaveda, Rigveda, Yajurveda, Atharveda. So I've put the links here already. Okay. 100, and some of them are quite long, some of them are very short, like the Kali Santarana Upanishad. So why these are called Mukhya Upanishad is because of their length, not because it's more important or whatever. It is important, all of them are important, but generally they cover more subject matter. So Isha Upanishad covers several subject matters. So Kena, like that, if you have more subject matters which are covered, the length of it then is considered as also Mukhya. So these are the Vedas in general, okay? And besides this, there is also something which comes under Shruti still, which is called Vedanga. Now Veda Anga, Vedanga comes from the word Veda Anga. Anga means arms, the arms or the limbs of the body. So if you can see the Vedas as the head, then the head has the mouth, and the mouth needs to be fed. So to feed the mouth, you need the limbs. So therefore, the Vedanga is like the key to unlock the secret of the Vedas. Because Vedanga gives us the means to understand the Vedas correctly. So what is in the Vedanga? Vedanga, there are 6 matters in the Vedanga, 6 Vedangas. So one is called, 5 of them is related to language. the language of Sanskrit. So Siksha is pronunciation. Chanda is meter. I mentioned Chanda just now earlier. Vyakarana is grammar. Nirukta is etymology or context of words. That means some words are used in which context. So this needs a bit more intelligence to understand. So it comes, the level of understanding is according to this, what I have written here. The easiest to understand is Siksha, pronunciation. This one we can learn, Sanskrit words are there. We can learn how to pronounce. Nowadays, a lot of people don't pronounce the Sanskrit mantras correctly. So there is a proper way to do it. And then pronunciation is not sufficient. It has to be also sung in a certain way. So therefore, we have chandas, meters. So that chanda and pronunciation together ensure that the Vedas cannot be tampered with, because then the pronunciation will run. Immediately we can detect, oh, something is wrong. Somebody changed the words here. All right. Or the meter will sound strange. It doesn't match the meter correctly. Then we can understand, oh, somebody made a change. Suddenly from one syllable, it became 2 syllables. So the meter ran. So it can be detected. So like that. And then to understand deeper, one needs to know grammar, because Sanskrit is a very interesting language. Later on, I will also post some things on Sanskrit. How even NASA is studying Sanskrit in detail, because it has been discovered that amongst all languages in the world, Sanskrit is the most suitable for computer language, for artificial intelligence and programming, because the grammar is perfect. It's very symmetrical, the grammar, and it has a very perfect balance. So therefore, it's there, and it's also accepted Sanskrit as the mother of all Indo-African or Indo-American, Indo-European languages. And in this way, we can see grammar is important. So Sanskrit grammar is interesting. It changes, the grammar will change the words in certain sentences. And then we have Nirukta, etymology, even more difficult to understand, because some words used in a certain context will mean differently. Like for example, the word Brahman. Brahman generally means spirit. But sometimes Brahman can also mean the Jiva. Brahman can also mean the Lord. The Brahman can also mean both. Or Brahman can also sometimes refer to the body also. So it depends on the context of usage according to the verse. So this knowledge is, this branch of knowledge of understanding the correct context is Nirukta or etymology. And then we have the application of all this which is coming under Kalpa or ritual detail, which supplements the Samhita and the Brahmanas very well, these Vedangas. And finally, we also have Jyotish. Jyotish means the science of the stars, astronomy and astrology. So basically, this is very important because in rituals, it needs to be supported by the correct muhurta. So, and therefore we have these Vedangas. So Vedangas are not very important by themselves. They exist only to give meaning to the Vedas. So by themselves, they have no purpose. So therefore, they are there for the purpose of the understanding of this Veda. So therefore, they are called Veda Anga, the limbs which help to support the Vedas. This is also Shruti. And then we have, and mainly the Vedangas come from the Brahmana section. You can see here the Brahmana section. This is mainly where the Vedangas are situated in the various 4 Vedas. And then we have also what we call Upaveda. Now, Upaveda means minor Veda or small Veda, or something, less important, small. Why these are called lesser or smaller things? Because Upavedas will give various rules of how to live. Like for example, human being, we are born in this material creation, right? So much in this material creation. So how to cook, how to eat. So the science of cooking is also there. How to live, how to earn money. how to do farming, how to build structures. So this is basically supplementary sciences or supplementary knowledge which helps to build our civilization. So that's called Uparveda. For example, right? So for example, we have Atharva Veda. What is, Sthapatya Veda. What is Sthapatya Veda? Sthapatya Veda is basically architecture and civil engineering. How to build structures. Not simply build them in a very energy efficient manner. Using context of geomancy, like Vastu Shastra, how positioning, taking into context, direction, facing of the sun, all these things are considered, and to maximize the best benefit for human being. Perfect. So therefore, this is the science of building. So if you look at, even now, those who build temples, they are called sthapatis. In India, if you go to India, those who build temples, they are called sthapatis because they study this Sthapatya Veda. And okay, building is nice. So once we build a few structures, then the neighboring kingdom becomes jealous. So when the neighboring kingdom becomes jealous, they will start attacking your country. So therefore, we have Dhanur Veda, the art of warfare, how to fight, how to protect, how to defend. So a lot of information is there. In fact, the art of war from Sun Tzu, Chinese philosopher, a very famous book, The Art of War, was actually coming from the Dhanur Veda. And many of the martial arts, which is now very popular all over the world, like, in China, Japan, Taekwondo, the Oriental countries, it's actually coming from India. The sage I Ching, he writes in his memoir how he brought martial art to China. And then from there, they developed separately on their own, and it went on further. So like in that way, we have Dhanur Veda. So when there is warfare, when people are fighting, what happens? We get wounded, isn't it? We get our hands cut off, our legs, we start bleeding, our organs get damaged. So therefore comes the science of Ayurveda. So Ayurveda, Ayur means life, how to extend one's life, how to live, and how to eat and live, and what are the things we should be doing daily as our oblations in order to ensure a healthy life, a long life. So this is called Ayurveda, the science of it. And then, once all these things are established, people also want some entertainment, how to live, how to entertain themselves. So they have Gandharva Veda. Gandharva Veda has many, many sub things. A lot of this information is lost because over the years, India, after being conquered by the Muslims destroyed a lot of temples. Aurangzeb went on a rampage. After Akbar, Aurangzeb went on a rampage and he destroyed many, many temples in North India, especially. And a lot of things were lost. And then later, when the British came, they conquered India for 200 years. And they were much, much worse than the Muslims because their goal was to undermine Indian culture and because they found such a wonderful culture. India was the richest country in the world at that time. The wealth of jewels and gems and all of this is now sitting in the Queen's jewelry, the crown jewels. So many things were plundered, and therefore a lot of things are lost. Some of these scriptures, there's stories saying that the British conquerors were so envious of the Ayurvedic practitioners who could simply by touch of their thumb and fingers detect a lot of, they can press their thumb on certain nerve spots and they do not need anesthesia. They can simply by pressing the thumb on certain spots, they can make the person lose feeling, and then they can perform surgery in that area without anesthesia. So there is evidence to show that these British conquerors, they rounded up all these Ayurvedic physicians and they cut off their thumbs so that this knowledge is lost. So like that, there was a systematic plan to undermine Vedic culture and so that they can break the backbone of the society of India, because just a few Britishers were controlling the vast majority of India. And the only way to do that was to break the culture, to make the people divided, and to make them think that they are inferior and that the conquerors are much superior. So by this, and they were successful. They did that in the last 200 years, which gave birth to the Congress government. So therefore, we have all this. And then there's gemology. So like that, here I'm just putting a few. So gemology, understanding gems, alchemy and metallurgy, how to produce different chemicals, how to produce different metals. Like even today, there is a tower in Delhi and also in South India. The one in Delhi, I know the name is Qutub Minar, and the one in South India, I forgot the name. This tower is made out of what looks like iron, but until now, hundreds of years, it has not rusted. Now, in modern science, even now, iron can only last a maximum of 1,000 years. Actually, within a few hundred years, it needs to be reinforced again. After that, it's completely rusted and it will break down. So any building which is built cannot last more than 100 to 1,000 years. It's within this period. But this particular structure, this minaret, which is carbon dated to be hundreds and thousands of years older, it is until now still not rusting. So this is all signs of metallurgy. And it's mentioned in the scripture here and there, some explanation is given also, that people in those days knew how to make gold. Gold was not just mined, it was also made by using bell metal and mercury. They were able to produce gold. So this is some interesting news. If you're interested in chemistry, we can try to look at that forgotten knowledge. So this was there, but now this science is lost. So these were all Upa-Vedas, part of the culture of the Vedas. It's basically supplementary Vedas to help human beings live peacefully in order to attain their dharma, artha, kama, and things like that. Okay. So now we have spoken about the 4 branches of the Vedas and the 4 sections of each branch of the Vedas. We spoke about the Vedanga, we spoke about the Upa-Veda. Now, I've mentioned that the cream of the Vedas, the real goal of the Vedas is for us to understand the Upanishads, which gives the knowledge. But Upanishads, there are 108 Upanishads with many verses in them. And therefore, what happened was understanding that in Kali Yuga, that people are not going to be so, they can't remember many things, because they cannot just remember one section. They need to remember the whole thing in full in order for them to connect the different verses. So Vyasadeva thought, okay, I will take this Upanishad, this cream of the Vedas, the Upanishad, and I will summarize it nicely into a very short notes, something like how we say short notes. You know, when we have exam, we like to prepare short notes. So we have a textbook, we also have short notes. So the short notes comes from the textbook. So, and when the exam is near, we don't have time to look through the textbook, we just go through the short notes. But the short notes speak about everything which is in the textbook anyway. So therefore, Vyasadeva created some short notes for us. So this is called Vedanta Sutra. Sutra means very short in aphorisms, very small, short sentences. So, but it becomes a little cryptic also, not so easy to understand, because the meanings can be many meanings. Imagine taking 108 Upanishads and condensing it all into a few short sentences without explanation, without examples. So this is called Vedanta Sutra, also known as the Brahma Sutras. And this is what is mainly studied by Vedantists. That means people who study Vedanta. They go through the Brahma Sutras, and commentaries are written for the Vedanta Sutras or Brahma Sutras. So I've spoken about the Shruti. So now we will stop here for today. And next week, we will speak about the other side, the remembering, Smriti. And then we will tie up the whole thing and we will try to see the bigger picture. And we will try to see where does Bhagavad Gita fall here and what are the other keys of which we can understand these Vedic scriptures. And also, finally, we don't have time in Kali Yuga to go through all these 600 million verses. So how can we, and neither do we have the intelligence or the brain power to understand the Shrutis. So one of the injunctions in the Vedas is given to protect the Vedas from misinterpretation, right? It is given that Shruti can only be understood by one who has taken the vows of the Brahmana. That means if one is not a Brahmana, one is forbidden from looking at the Shrutis in general. So that is basically the idea. So for the non-Brahmanas, ideally society is supposed to be guided by Brahmanas and then they pass this message to the nuns. But this is one of the problems because nowadays anybody, any Tom, Dick and Harry is trying to open up the Vedas and they don't come through parampara. They do not know Vedanga properly. They do not know etymology, grammar in the correct manner. And they don't understand the full picture. They only understand one part of it and then they make conclusions. And in this way, they mislead society. So we will hear next week, what are the safeguards? What are the ways the Vedas are protected so that we can understand the real meaning? So ultimately, we don't have to go through all 600 million verses. We don't have to read everything, right? There are something called the fruit of the desire tree. Remember, the Vedas are called desire tree. It's called desire tree. So I hope we can understand why we call it desire tree now, because it gives us so much of information, all kinds of information. Want to live happily, want to do this, want to, even the science of economics is given in the Vedas. How to, the system of trade, money, barter, all this information is mentioned in the Vedas. How to cook properly, all this comes in Ayurveda. There's a branch of Ayurveda just for cooking. How to cook rice correctly, how to make sabjis in the right way, when to eat in which season, what to avoid when one is sick. So these kind of things are all mentioned in the Upavedas. So since it gives so much of information just to satisfy our desires, therefore it is called desire tree, kalpavriksha. And not only material desires, it can satisfy spiritual desires. So this is what we will hear more also in the next part. Okay, so we end here. Right, so in case you don't have the Bhagavad Gita, you can still order. You can let me know. You can just send me a message and I can get it for you. You can get it within 3 or 4 days. You can get the kit also. This comes with the Bhagavad Gita. It comes with chanting beads, with the chanting bag. So you can start chanting Hare Krishna. And you also have 2 other small books, and you have this Damodar small poster. Not a poster, it's like a card, which you can keep in your altar. So all this comes together for 56 ringgit, inclusive of postage. It is discounted because the beads itself, it's about 20 ringgit if you buy the neem bead. So 20 plus 35 is already 55, plus these other things, and including postage. So if you get this set, it's cheaper for you, rather than just buying the Gita alone. So, but you can also do that. So I'm just letting you know. And we also have the Srimad Bhagavatam. So I won't speak about this at the moment. I will keep this for next time. Okay, so I won't speak on this first. Right, so now any questions? We can ask questions based on what we discussed today, or even anything else that we have discussed previously, or any other type of clarification which you'd like to hear, we can discuss. So I hope you found the topic interesting. So I'm not sure. It's a bit technical, perhaps, but this is just a special session. So special sessions are sometimes technical because we want to explain certain concepts, which I'm trying to present it in a simple way as much as I can, but without any dilution. So like now we will discuss Vedas, Vedic scriptures, just to understand the length and breadth of it, so we can appreciate the wealth of treasure which is in Hinduism, Sanatan Dharma. And but the main discussion in level 2 will be mainly from the Bhagavad Gita. We will speak about the Gita Mahatmya, how in the Padma Purana it is described the glories of the Bhagavad Gita. So we have gone through the first round, level 1, and in detail we have looked at all the chapters. And what we will do now, we will read them from the book. So I would request all of you to go through the book, Bhagavad Gita, at least the chapters which I will indicate each week. And as we are reading them, you can also refer back to your old recordings of level 1 Gita if you would like extra explanation. Otherwise, if there are any doubts, anything which you're not clear about, you can raise them in the WhatsApp, or you can even message me. And then, or you can, better still, if you can raise them during our Q&A session now. Like after the session, we will have a Q&A. So at this time also, you can raise them and we can discuss. So that would be the main thing. Yeah.
Prabhu Hare Krishna, I have a question.
Yes.
Prabhu Hare Krishna, Prabhu, I want to ask, if let's say God wants us to understand Him, right? So why He have to come up with this very complex knowledge and also with very complex language, Sanskrit, and want us to understand Him and also get back to Him?
Okay. Thank you for that. So it's not complex because remember, this was given for all the ages. So Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga. So it is only complex now for us in Kali Yuga. So that's why the Lord also gave us Smriti. So that we will discuss in the next session. How especially in Kali Yuga, Smriti is particularly meant for us. So it's not complex. For example, Mahabharata is in Smriti. Ramayana is in Smriti. So it's story, right? It's easy for us to read, for us to understand. So many examples, so many ways of how examples of different personalities, how they perfected their lives. So we don't have to go through complex formulas. We don't have to go through complex Sanskrit. We can simply get the benefit by going through the Smritis. And we will discuss more of this in the next week when we go through the part 2 of it, when we talk about the Smritis. So it's not complex, it is there. And at the same time, you could say in one way it is a little complex because the Lord has two purposes. Because remember, the policy of the Lord is non-interference. He gives us the free will. He doesn't want to force us, because love cannot be forced, right? Service cannot be forced, because if we do that, then Krishna becomes a dictator. So that cannot, he can do it, but he doesn't. So therefore, and because we have made these choices of not wanting to serve the Lord, of instead becoming envious of the Lord or trying to enjoy his potency, so therefore we have come to this material world. And after having come to this material world, we want to continue enjoying. We want to continue doing what we want. So the Lord facilitates for that. So the great intelligence of the Lord is such that he creates a system which at the same time facilitates the jiva's desire to enjoy and to lord over matter and to get power within this material world. But at the same time, it will teach us to renounce it. And the moment we are ready to look at the other way towards the Lord, all benefit is given immediately. The Lord is in our heart. The moment we turn our head and we have this desire to try to understand him sincerely and seriously, the Lord will provide. Seek and ye shall find. This is the verse in the Bible, right? So one has to first learn to seek. So the moment he decides to seek, until he doesn't want to seek, the Lord doesn't interfere. But the Lord still wants us to follow. So that's why he puts nuggets of information here and there. So as the people are reading the Brahmana, the Samhita, suddenly a nugget of information will come about bhakti, about spirituality, and then they become curious. So if that curiosity bears fruit, then they will continue searching deeper. But if it doesn't, if it gets overwhelmed by their lust and their desires and everything else, then again they continue. But every time there is an opportunity, because the culture of society was such, guided by Brahmanas, there is every opportunity for the jiva to get these benefits. So it's just now in Kali Yuga, things are different. So, but nevertheless, the opportunities are still there. The knowledge is still protected. The four paramparas are still existing in Kali Yuga. So one simply has to take advantage of them. And in this way, one can still perfect one's life.
Prabhu,
Okay.
Prabhu, this is Ganesh. I have one query.
Yes.
All those literatures that you mentioned, the Upanishad, the Veda, the Rig Veda, are they all translated in English?
Yes. Yes, they are. The first person who translated them to English is Max Muller. Now, Max Muller's translation you cannot trust, because he wrote a letter to his wife saying that Max Muller is during the time of the British when they conquered India. So their purpose was to destroy Vedic civilization. So they purposely got Max Muller to translate it, and then they instructed Max Muller to bring out to write it in such a way that it will break the faith of the Indians. So anyway, that is mainly one translation, but then there are other translations. So the Sampradayas along the years, they have also translated. In fact, Delhi University professors are there, they have translated them. But a code of warning, it's best to follow translations as per the Sampradaya, rather than to look at it from the academic point of view, because the academic point of view tend to miss out certain information. But nevertheless, it's good to compare. If you'd like to compare evidence and all that, you can still look at it. But the real secret of understanding the scriptures is through the Vedic, the Sampradaya. So those who are following the Sampradaya, they have written. So the Vedas are there. Not every Sampradaya has translated the Vedas. The Rig Veda, Samaveda, Yajur Veda and all that, that one is, I think, currently existing mainly academic translation. But the Vedanta Sutra, the Upanishads, these are fully translated in English by the Sampradayas. So that you can avail. There are websites where you can get them, and there are books also. There is a Bhakti Vedanta Book Trust, and there is also another name, I forgot the name, where they actually have this. When I went to India once, you go to Vrindavan and all these places, you can easily get these books. So I've got a few collection in my house. I have some Upanishads and the Puranas and all that, so in English. And Mahabharata also. Mahabharata, there's a devotee who wrote the Mahabharata very nicely in novel form. It's quite a thick book, so it's quite interesting. Ramayana is also very much presented in English also. Not the full version, not verse by verse. Some of these works, they don't go verse by verse. They are basically summary study, like one single book. Yes, Prabhuji. I hope that answers.
Well, if you kind enough, send me a link of places where authorized links, so I can look at it.
Okay. Okay. So give me some time. I will see.
Rush, yeah.
Okay. All right. Sure. Right. Anything else?
Hi, Prabhu. This is Rajan here again, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Yes.
Hi, Krishna.
Hmm.
Prabhu, you mentioned in your lecture earlier today that the Vedas were actually written by Lord Ganesha as dictated by Vedvyasa.
Hmm.
And I suppose it was done during the Dwapara Yuga, is it?
Yes.
Okay. If Dwapara Yuga, you also mentioned that the age of the Vedas were 3,700 years, but then we are now 5,100 years or so into Kali Yuga, see?
Yeah.
So how do you reconcile that?
Okay. So carbon dating is not very precise. So if you can see, first of all, there is the evidence of carbon dating. And secondly, there is also motivated interpretation of scientific evidence. So there are certain situations where there is a concerted effort by the Western world where they are trying to undermine Vedic civilization and they are trying to establish Western civilization. So generally, mainstream historians tend to not accept even when evidence is presented otherwise. So there is one thing about that. But nevertheless, carbon dating has its flaws. There are many who argue that the carbon dating actually should extend to 4,000 years at least. So it's still when the age goes, when the age comes a bit, when the leap starts to happen within thousands of years, there is some issue with that. It's not very precise. So it could also be a copy of the existing copy. It could not be the real copy. Like someone could have written it 4,000 years ago. Not to say that the one that we are carbon dating is the actual original version from Vedas. It could have been copied later on by other people. So this is basically my understanding of that, Prabhuji.
And the recording of Prabhu, was it, would I be correct to say that it was actually written in Sanskrit?
Yes.
By Lord Ganesha?
Yes.
And did he, I mean, is it believed that he actually personally came down in physical form to write it?
Yes.
During the Dwapara Yuga?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay. All right. So anything else? Okay. Right. So I hope you enjoyed that presentation. I hope it wasn't too technical. So if you feel it is a bit technical, do let me know. Maybe I can try to not present certain aspects. So anyway, we will have, as I said, on and off technical sessions just to read. So if you have any questions specifically, like I'll just mention some of the special topics we have planned. The Vedas is one thing. Then later on, we will also speak about the law of karma, how the law of karma works. And that will be another two-part session, actually a three-part session. It can be a bit technical, but we need to understand how karma works. And later on, we can also hear about the different energies of the Lord, how the creation takes place in more detail, and things like that. And there are different aspects of bhakti involved, which we can learn also. So these are some other technical topics which we will cover. So you'll see how it goes. Do give me feedback. If you wish me to cover a particular topic, we can keep that in mind and prepare it later on. All right, so thank you very much. I think we can stop here for today. There won't be quiz for this session because I will wait until this session is finished next week, and then I will short release the quiz so that you can go through it. Okay, so we will end by having food for the soul, right? So therefore, let us chant together this Maha Mantra. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Tat Sat. So thank you very much. I'll see you all again next week.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Haribol.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you.
And happy Deepavali.
Yes, happy Deepavali to you.